Creativity. We think it's this mystical thing that is wavering out in the universe that if we can just grab hold of it, we'll be able to write a great book. But today I'm going to talk about the science of creativity and why you should find out your creative superpower. Today, I'm going to be talking about your creative superpower. And the information that I'll be sharing is from a great book, Write Without the Fight by Julia Roberts. There is a link to that down below. So, as is pointed out in this great book, Write Without the Fight, there is a science behind creativity, and she calls it deliberate creativity. Now, she actually has a degree in creative science. And when I first was introduced to her, it's been about 1.5 years ago now, in a online mastermind, I was just like floored because I never even considered that there would be science behind creativity. So in her book, she purports there's 4 phases to creativity. So we're going to discuss those today. And with the idea of what is your creative superpower. All right, so the 4 phases are clarity, ideas, structure, and finish. So clarity is where you identify the challenges of the project or decide what it will take to do this project. Okay, so you have to have a vision of the entire thing. So she talks about this being a struggle for her. And I think it is for a lot of people because planning, especially if it's your first book, can be really difficult because you're not really sure everything it entails. So can clarity be your superpower? It sure can. If you're the person who loves to plan everything down to the last detail or super organized, this might be your superpower. Now, the next superpower is ideas. Now, this is the brainstorming page. And I will just tell you straight out that brainstorming is my superpower. Any writer I talk to who talks to me about their story, I'll be like, well, what if you did this? What if you did that? How about if you did this? Da, da, da. When I'm watching a movie, I'll think, well, are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? No, they're probably going to do this because it's the trope, but they should do blah, blah, or blah, blah, or blah, blah. Tons of ideas. But having tons of ideas can also be a weakness because you have to pick out the best ideas and stick with them and complete them. Okay, so that's the next phase of creativity is structure, and that's the development. When you take the ideas and you develop them into a poem or a novel or a short story or a script, whatever your mode of sharing your creativity might be. I mean, some people will be filmmakers, obviously, I just mentioned that. So that is when you take those ideas that you have and you mold them and structure them and put them into the shape that you want. And this can be a really difficult thing for writing a novel or a nonfiction book because there are norms, there are expectations of how that should go. And I have talked about story structure briefly in a different video. So if you're not sure about that, make sure you check that out. But if you don't have the structure right and understand the structure, then you might fall down in this place. Now, I know writers who feel this is their weakness because they don't understand the structure or because certain parts of the structure bog them down. So don't get too hung up on the structure until you learn more about writing. Just write, just get your ideas formulated and get them out in a semblance of what you want. And the last phase of creativity is the finish phase. This is when it's implementation. And for writing a book, that involves your entitled revision and editing and polishing process. It involves hiring an editor and a cover designer and whatever else if you're going to indie publish, or it involves researching and querying agents and publishers if you're going to do the traditional route of publishing. So the finishing phase is really huge for people who want to publish a book. So some people are really great at this because they're great at researching and finding that stuff, and they like doing the work because it's also going to involve marketing your book eventually. That's part of the finish phase of creativity. But you'll go through all these phases again as you're designing your marketing plan. That's what's so exciting about this science of creativity, is that every creative thing you do is going to be mandated by it. So I love what Robert says in her book. This is my favorite quote from it. You cannot bully yourself into creating. You must lead yourself into it with some expectation of joy and magic. So we have this magical idea and we want to write it. But sometimes carrying it out can be difficult. So there are variations by phase, and she talks in her book about the best thinking for each phase and the best feeling for each phase. And so it's here on the screen, so you can check it out. I'm not going to read the screen for you, but remember, clarity is your visionary stage. Ideas are when you're expanding your ideas. So it's really important to be non-judgmental during that time, because sometimes we will veto our best ideas just because they sound really way out there. But a lot of times that means it's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best idea because it's going to be so unique and different. Structure is when we have to be organized and we have to evaluate things. And that can be difficult in that structure phase, especially when you're writing, because you think, but I have to be creative because the story's still coming out. I still have to come up with ideas as I go along. So that's why you might not stay in one phase all the time. You shift back and forth between the phases. And I think when you're writing this ideas and structure phase, you shift back between it a lot, maybe for every chapter even. But especially if you get stuck, oh, I've written myself into a corner, now what? And then for the finish phase, that's when you have to be technical. You have to put everything in context and say, okay, now how does this really work? How am I going to get this out into the world? After you make sure, of course, that it's perfect. So then there's the different feelings for each phase. And I'm not going to talk too much about them. I hope you're looking at them. You can write them down, but definitely pick up this book, you guys. There's a link to it down below. It is an affiliate link, so I'll earn a few pennies if you use it. But notice what you're feeling. I think a lot of times when we're creative, I know for me, I get super excited in the ideas phase because look, I'm playful, it's permissive, I'm indulging myself. This is so great. And so I don't want to go into the structure phase because then I'm going to have to be dedicated. I'm going to need to focus. I'm going to stop being able to just chase all the plot bunnies. I'm going to have to focus in and really nail it down and write it. So I think that a lot of times because we are dreading the feeling that's going to go from in the next stage, that we avoid it. We put the brakes on and we say, no, no, no. But in order to create, we have to make it through all 4 phases. So it's really important to allow yourself to understand what the feelings are and then prepare yourself for them. Okay, tomorrow the writing begins. I have to stop playing around and make a plan for it. All right. So you can learn more, as I've mentioned, about this book, this great book by Julia Roberts. You can just pick it up now from Amazon. Like I said, the link is down below. And there is also down below a link to The Duck Was Stuck or something, which is a children's story that Roberts wrote that explains the different phases of creativity. And reading it, it's free to read, will help you possibly figure out what phase you're in right now, or what phase is your strength. Because you'll go, oh, I totally connect with that. Oh yeah, that's where I'm happy too. And the thing for me is that I get happy in quite a few of the phases, but a lot of times it's hard to shift through them. And that's one of the things that Roberts talks about in this book, is how to shift through them, how to teach yourself to shift to the new way of thinking and the new feelings that you need to be able to go to the next phase of creativity. So I hope that you will comment with what you think your superpower is and pick up this great book.